Some stories do not move in a straight line. They spread. A name on a map becomes a murder. A murder becomes a legend. A legend waits for centuries, until another woman's name is drawn into the same dark place. Then another thread appears, leading away from the hills, away from Somerset, to a vanished estate agent in London, and a man who may have carried more secrets than he ever confessed. Dead Woman's Ditch sounds like the beginning of one story, but it is not. It is a web. At the centre is an ancient earthwork on the Quantock Hills, older than the murders later tied to it, older than the women whose names become part of its lore. Somewhere behind the name may be a woman no one remembers. Then came Jane Walford, killed by her husband in the 18th century. Then Shirley Banks, who disappeared from Bristol in 1987 and was found months later near the place whose name already seemed to know too much. And beyond Shirley, another absence, Susie Lamplugh, who left for a house viewing in Fulham and never came home. None of these women lived the same life. Their stories belonged to different places, different centuries, different kinds of grief. And yet somehow, the threads touch.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.
On the under $3 menu at McDonald's, a McChicken is $2. Because when you're craving a McChicken, you deserve a McChicken. And now, that McChicken is just $2.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Plan B made over-the-counter emergency contraception legal more than 20 years ago. It's a safe, effective backup birth control option that helps prevent pregnancy before it starts by temporarily delaying ovulation. Plan B is the #1 OBGYN recommended brand and the only one you can find at all major retailers in all 50 U.S. states. There's no minimum age requirement and you don't need an ID to buy it. You can order it through DoorDash and other major delivery platforms too. That's freedom to be. Use as directed.
The pharmacy system is outdated, and it's time for a change. OptumRx is introducing an industry-first transparent pharmacy care model with a pricing approach where clients pay a monthly, per-member fee for services that is independent of manufacturers' list prices or prescription volume, and digital tools that help consumers compare pricing. It's a smarter model, built to work better for everyone. That's how OptumRx continues to reset the standard. Learn more at optum.com/transparency.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and welcome to the Whispering Woods After Dark. I've got one long story today. Now, just a heads up, it does involve murder. I don't go into any details about it. But it's also connected to this place. So it gives the whole picture, if you get what I'm trying to say. I'll get straight into it. Are you ready for the story? There are places whose names seem to arrive before the story. Dead Woman's Ditch is one of them. It lies high on the Quantock Hills in Somerset, near Overstowe, where tracks run through woodland, heather and open ground, and where the landscape can feel very old very quickly. Today, walkers pass through the area with maps, boots, dogs and rucksacks, but the name follows them before they even reach it. Dead Woman's Ditch. A name like that asks a question. Who was she? For many years, the answer given was Jane Walford, a young woman murdered by her husband John in 1789. Her story became fixed to the place so strongly that the ditch seemed to belong to her, as though the land had taken her death and preserved it in its name. But the unsettling thing is this. The name appears to be older than Jane Walford's murder. The ditch was already there. The name was already there. The land had already been called Dead Woman's Ditch before the most famous dead woman was ever found. That is what makes this story more than a murder remembered by local legend. To understand why Dead Woman's Ditch lingers in the imagination, it helps to picture the place around it. The Quantock Hills rise in West Somerset, not with the drama of mountains, but with something older and quieter. They are hills of combes and ridges, of beechwoods, bracken, heather, gorse, deep lanes and sudden open views. In one direction, the land falls away toward the Bristol Channel. In another, it opens towards Exmoor and the wider Somerset countryside. It's a beautiful place, but beauty does not always make a landscape gentle. There are parts of the Quantocks that feel sheltered and green, where paths run beneath trees and the ground is soft with leaf litter. Then the woods break, the sky widens, and the hills become exposed, windswept and lonely. Mist can gather there quickly. Sound carries strangely. A walker can feel close to roads and villages one moment, then oddly removed from everything the next. The old names add to that feeling. Lady's Fountain, Robin Upright's Hill, Ramscombe, Dead Woman's Ditch. They are names that belong to tracks, springs, slopes and earthworks, passed down through use long after their first meanings have disappeared. Some sound harmless enough, others feel like warnings left on the map. Dead Woman's Ditch is not a neat grave or a monument built for remembrance. It's part of a much older line in the ground, a prehistoric bank and ditch cutting across the hill. Whoever first made it was marking the land for reasons that are now lost. A boundary perhaps, a defence, a division between one place and another. By the time Jane Walford's story attached itself to the ditch, the earthwork had already outlived the people who made it by thousands of years. That is what gives this place its strange heaviness. The murder did not happen in an ordinary field. It happened in a landscape already marked, already named, already carrying old memory in the ground. And on the Quantocks, where the paths dip into shadow and the high ridges open beneath the sky, it's easy to understand how one grim name could survive for centuries. Dead Woman's Ditch. A place that sounds less like a location and more like the beginning of a story no one has ever fully explained. Then centuries later, the place gathered a human story, then another. In the Somerset County Herald clipping, The Land of Quantock, printed on Saturday 12th of March 1938, Dead Woman's Ditch appears as part of the older Quantock landscape, a place already known, already named, already carrying its grim identity through local memory. Then 50 years later, the Daily Mirror printed another name across the same landscape, At last, they found Shirley. That clipping, from Tuesday 5th of April 1988, reported that the search for Shirley Banks had ended near Dead Woman's Ditch. A modern crime had been drawn, horribly and by chance, into a place whose name had long been associated with murdered women. So this is not the story of one death. It's the story of a name, a ditch older than its legends, a place where the past keeps finding new echoes, and a question that remains long after the walkers have gone and the Quantocks have fallen quiet again. If Dead Woman's Ditch was already called that before Jane Walford died, then who was the first dead woman? The woman most often connected with Dead Woman's Ditch, as said, was Jane Walford. Her story belongs to the late 18th century, when the Quantock Hills were not a landscape for leisure in the way they are now. The paths were working paths, the woods were working woods, and the open ground above Overstowey could feel remote, especially in poor weather or fading light. Jane was married to John Walford. In local legend, theirs was not remembered as a happy marriage. The story that survived is one of violence, suspicion, and a final journey into the hills. According to the old account, John took Jane out onto the Quantocks and murdered her there. Afterwards, the place and the crime became inseparable. People said Dead Woman's Ditch was called that because of Jane. And it's easy to understand why. A young wife murdered by her husband, a body left in a lonely place, a high track through an ancient landscape, a name that seemed to preserve the whole horror of it in 3 words: Dead Woman's Ditch. John Walford was tried, convicted and hanged for the murder in 1789. In some tellings, his body was afterwards displayed in chains close to the place associated with the crime. A final warning set into the landscape for anyone passing that way. The image gives the story its old darkness. Not only Jane, dead on the hill, but John left above the ground after death, punished in public, his body becoming part of the warning carried by the place. The Quantocks held both victim and murder in memory, and over time, the details settled into local folklore. But the name itself will not sit neatly, because if Dead Woman's Ditch was already called that before Jane Walford died, then her murder did not create the name, it answered it. That's the strangest part of this legend. Jane's story fits the place so perfectly that later generations could believe the ditch had been named for her. Yet the name appears to have been waiting before the murder occurred, as though the land had already been prepared for the story that would one day attach itself there. Perhaps there was another woman before Jane. Perhaps there was an older story, now lost. Perhaps the name came from something entirely different, reshaped over time into human tragedy, because people need a name like that to mean something. But after 1789, there was no escaping the association. Jane Walford became the dead woman, and the ditch kept her. Nearly 200 years after Jane Walford's murder, Dead Woman's Ditch appeared in the newspapers again. This time the woman was Shirley Banks. In the Daily Mirror clipping I came across, titled "At Last They Found Shirley," printed on Tuesday the 5th of April 1988, the headline carried the end of the search that had lasted for months. On the evening of 8th of October 1987, Shirley Banks went shopping in Bristol. She was 29 years old, newly married, and living in Clifton with her husband Richard. She worked as a textiles factory manager, and that Thursday evening should have been ordinary. Broadmead was busy with shops, traffic, people leaving work, people heading home, and the familiar movement of a city centre settled into evening. Shirley had arranged to meet Richard later for a drink, but she never arrived. At first, there was still room for ordinary explanations. She might have been delayed. She might have changed her plans. She might have met someone she knew or decided to go somewhere else before coming home. Richard began looking for her, checking places where she might reasonably have gone, searching bars and trying to make sense of her absence. Then the hours passed. The following morning, Richard phoned Shirley's workplace. What he was told made the situation stranger. Shirley had apparently called in sick, saying she had an upset stomach. But Shirley was still missing. That phone call would become one of the most chilling details of the case, because police later believed she'd already been abducted by then. The call was not proof that she was safe. It may have been made while she was under the control of the man who had taken her. As Friday passed, and Shirley still did not return, the fear around her disappearance sharpened. This was no longer a young woman late home from shopping. It was something else. A wife had gone into Bristol city centre and vanished. Her husband was searching, her car was missing. And somewhere between Broadmead and the life she was supposed to return to, Shirley Banks had crossed into the hands of John Cannon. The search for Shirley Banks became one of the largest investigations Avon and Somerset police had handled. In the first days, there was still the possibility that she might be found alive. Appeals were made, sightings were checked, and officers tried to reconstruct the last known movements of a woman who had left an ordinary evening behind her and vanished into the city. Bristol docks were searched, television appeals went out. Police followed one lead after another, trying to find Shirley, her car, or the man who had taken her. Around 150 officers would eventually work on the case, giving tens of thousands of hours to the search. But for weeks, Shirley was missing. Then, at the end of October 1987, John Cannon was arrested over an unrelated assault. At first, he was not being held for Shirley's disappearance. But when police began looking more closely at him, they found details that pulled him directly into her case. He'd been living in Lee Woods near Bristol, at a lock-up garage connected to his block of flats. Officers found Shirley's Mini. It had been painted blue. Nearby, they also found her car tax disc. It was the kind of discovery that changes an investigation. Until then, Shirley's disappearance had been full of terrible uncertainty. Now her missing car had been found hidden and altered, linked to a man already in police custody. Cannon claimed he had bought the Mini from a man at an auction, but the explanation did not hold. More evidence followed. Witnesses came forward. The picture around him tightened. By December 1987, John Cannon had been charged with Shirley's kidnap and murder. Still, Shirley had not been found. Her family had to go on waiting through winter and into spring, with the case moving forward, but without the one thing they most needed, to bring her home. Then, on 3rd of April 1988, searchers were on the Quantox Hills in Somerset. They were in a woodland near a place already known by one of the bleakest names in the county, Dead Woman's Ditch. There, in a remote forest stream, they found Shirley Banks. The Daily Mirror clipping printed 2 days later carried that headline, "At last they found Shirley." It showed the end of one search and the beginning of another kind of grief. Her husband Richard, who'd spent months without answers, was pictured holding a small child as the news settled around him. The name of the place made the discovery feel almost unbearable. A woman missing from Bristol, a body found on the Contogs. A modern murder drawn into the shadow of an ancient ditch, already linked to the death of Jane Walford nearly 200 years earlier. For Shirley's family, it was not folklore, it was loss. But for Dead Woman's Ditch, the discovery became another dark echo in a place whose name had never sounded innocent. John Cannon was not the kind of offender who looked frightening from a distance. That was part of the danger. He could appear charming, confident, and respectable. He knew how to present himself. He could talk to women, flatter them, make himself seem successful, and move through ordinary places without immediately drawing suspicion. By the time Shirley Banks disappeared in October 1987, Cannon was already a man with a violent history. He'd served a prison sentence for rape and had been released the year before. Behind him were offences against women. Ahead of him, though no one knew it clearly enough at the time, were more victims and a murder case that would eventually expose the pattern. He had a method. He did not usually attack as a stranger, lunging from the dark. He drew women into conversation. He used charm, confidence, lies, and sometimes the appearance of wealth or authority. He made himself seem safe enough for a moment, and that moment was all he needed. In the weeks around Shirley's disappearance, and Cannon was living in Bristol, he was known to visit bars and social places looking for women. The night before he abducted Shirley Banks, he attempted to kidnap another woman. She survived, and that failed attack would later become part of the evidence against him. Then came Shirley. A woman shopping in Broadmead, a woman with a husband waiting for her, a woman who should have gone home. Instead, she was taken by a man who had already shown what he was capable of. At trial, the crimes laid before the court did not concern Shirley alone. Cannon was convicted not only for Shirley's murder, but also for other violent offences against women, including a further sexual offence, an attempted kidnapping, and 2 offences of abduction. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1989. The question of whether he had killed before Shirley is harder to answer clearly. What was proved in court was Shirley's murder, but police would later suspect that Cannon's violence had reached further back. One of the names most often linked to him was Sulie Lamplugh, the young London estate agent who vanished in 1986, 15 months before Shirley Banks disappeared. Cannon was never convicted in Susie's case. He denied involvement. But in 2002, police named him as their prime suspect. There were other suspicions too. Other women, other attacks. Other cold cases where his name appeared in the margins, not always as a certainty, but as a shadow. By the time Shirley Banks was found near Dead Woman's Ditch, the man responsible for her death was no longer simply a murderer in one case. He was becoming something more disturbing. A man whose proven crimes were terrible enough, but whose suspected history suggested that Shirley may not have been the first woman to vanish after crossing his path. Sulie Lamplugh was 25 years old, an estate agent working in Fulham, and on 28th of July 1986, She left her office to show a house to a client whose name was written in her diary as Mr. Kipper. The appointment was for 12:45. Susie took her keys, her purse, and the ordinary things she needed for a working appointment. She left her handbag behind. Around 10 minutes later, she was seen waiting outside the empty property in Shorrolds Road. Then she was seen with a man. After that, she was gone. Her body has never been found. The disappearance of Susie Lamplugh became one of Britain's most haunting missing person cases. There was no final scene that could be properly understood, no body to bring home, no complete explanation for her family, only the terrible image of a young woman leaving work for a routine appointment and vanishing into the middle of the day. For years, the name Mr. Kipper hung over the case. Who was he? Had he used a false name? Had he chosen Susie deliberately? Had she met him before? Or was he only a voice on the phone? A man with an appointment book entry and an address. The case remained opened, but answers did not come. Then after Shirley Banks was murdered, John Cannon's name began to attach itself to Susie's disappearance too. He'd been released from prison shortly before Susie vanished. He had connections to the area. He was said to resemble the man seen with her, and he was later known to have used charm, lies, and false confidence to approach women. In 2002, the Metropolitan Police named Cannon as their prime suspect in Susie's disappearance, but he was never charged. He denied involvement, and Susie was never found. That is why his link to her case has such a cold finality. With Shirley Banks, there was a trial, a conviction, and a body found on the Quantocks. With Susie, there is only absence. A woman walking out of an estate agent office in Fulham, and then nothing. For Shirley Banks, John Cannon was proved to be the murderer. For Susie Lamplugh, he remained the prime suspect. The man police believed may have held the answer to a disappearance that never stopped hurting those left behind. If he knew where Susie was, he never told. And when he died in prison, that silence went with him. Dead Woman's Ditch began as a name on the Quantocks. Older than Jane Walford, older than Shirley Banks, older than the stories most often used to explain it. Perhaps there was another woman once, one whose name has vanished while the place name remained. Perhaps the truth was lost so long ago that only the warning survived. But the ditch is still there. A line cut through ancient ground. A place where walkers pass beneath the trees and across the hill, carrying on through a landscape that is beautiful, quiet, and not quite free of what has happened there. Because some names do not fade, they wait. And Dead Woman's Ditch is one of them.
You're never just one thing. You're the boss.
Hey Google, when's my next meeting?
The athlete.
That class wrecks me.
And their mom.
Everyone in?
The all-new Mazda CX-5. More to move every side of you. Learn more at MazdaUSA.com.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC. Sequences shortened and simulated.
We've been the trusted experts since 1960 because nobody knows tires better than we do. And with over 90 tire brands, we have an abundance of options in stock for your vehicle. Buy and drive today at DiscountTire.com. Let's get you taken care of.
Now, this place isn't far from me. It's about half an hour drive. So I do plan, if I can get Luna in the car, because she gets really frightened, and I get really frightened of going out. I struggle with that since George and his accident. But I want to try and push myself a bit, so I'm going to drag Rog up to Devil's Ditch, and I'll do some photographs or video from there or something in the near future. Well, that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed What a Harrowing Case. Take care, and I'll catch you again on Monday.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
On the under $3 menu at McDonald's, a McChicken is $2. Because when you're craving a McChicken, you deserve a McChicken. And now that McChicken is just $2 with McValue.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did she have to fight a dragon?
Nope. She bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.